10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, Episode 3. Welcome back, everybody, to Episode 3 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. Today's lesson is going to be part 1 in a 2-part series on diminished dominance and getting your vocabulary up over these chord changes. As always, the goal of this show is to give you a short and concise jazz lesson to work on for the week and teach you the concepts of each lesson step by step. My name is Nick Manella. I will be your host, and I'll also be guiding you through our lesson today. Make sure that you find the downloadable PDFs at our website, www.10minutejazzlesson.com. That's the number 10, minutejazzlesson.com. You can also find our blog and lots of cool resources on our website, so make sure you go and check it out today. Today's podcast is going to be a little bit more advanced, nothing that is going to be totally out of the grasp of anybody, but is definitely going to be more advanced than our thirds and sevenths exercise. So, listen to the podcast, see if it's something that you're ready to be working on. And if it's not, hey, we're always going to have future episodes, and you can still download the PDF so that you have them in your library when you are ready to start working on this stuff. All right, let's jump into today's lesson. Today's lesson is going to be on diminished dominance, and diminished dominance are one of the most important concepts to explore in jazz improvisation. Have you ever seen a dominant 7 flat 9th chord? Of course you have. Did you know that every time you see this chord, it is implied diminished dominant? That's why I'm exploring this concept with you today and giving you some material to work on that will allow you to make this a part of your repertoire. Let's start with the diminished scale. If you don't know, the diminished scale is what we call octatonic and is comprised of a whole step, half step pattern. It's as simple as that. When many of my students see diminished chords, they instantly freeze up. I explain to them that the way to get started with some material over these chords is to learn your diminished scales. Let's start there for this lesson. Let's say we see a C diminished chord. All we have to do is start on the note C and play a scale that goes back and forth between whole steps and half steps. We call this a whole half scale or a diminished scale. Let's explore how this particular scale sounds, and this will be exercise number 1 on this week's PDF. So if what we just heard was a diminished scale, and this week's lesson is on diminished dominance, something has to change, right? What we are going to do is reverse the pattern of the previous scale so that we have a half-whole pattern instead of the previously demonstrated diminished scale. This allows us to hit the flat 9, sharp 9, and sharp 11 on our dominant chord. These are what I like to think of as the colorful notes in the chord that will break us out of our purely diatonic playing. Exercise number 2 this week is all about the half-whole or diminished dominant scale. The very first thing you need to do is get these scales under your fingers and in your mind before you can hope to use them in your solos. These scales sound slightly different than the whole half scales, and I will demonstrate exactly what they sound like in exercise number 2 for you now. There's exercise number 2 for you to get that sound in your ears. You might find it excessive that I made you sit there and listen to me play all 12 keys, but remember, I'm trying to get the sound of this scale in your ears, and that's one of the most important things you can do as an improviser is have a concept firmly embedded in your ears before you start practicing it. You'll notice that I have provided the chord changes that these scales work over in the examples. I want you to have the end goal in mind as you start practicing these exercises. For the extra observant listeners out there, did you notice anything about the patterns of notes through the different keys? That's right, there are really only 3 unique scales throughout the 12 keys. After the third scale, the notes are the same as the first scale, only starting on a different pitch. The same holds true for the diminished scales in exercise number 1. I still want you to practice all 12 keys as written in the exercise, but you may notice that it gets easier as you move along because the patterns end up being the same as you already played. As with all of the exercises I give you on this podcast, you will only start to benefit from working on this when you memorize every single note on the sheet. Do this slowly and carefully. Make sure you start at a slow tempo, but make sure that you are memorizing everything to get the full benefit. Next week, we're going to take this knowledge and we're going to put them into real life situations over chord changes that come up in the tunes that you will see. These exercises are a primer for the more difficult material next week, so make sure you practice them and have some degree of proficiency with them before the next episode. All right, everyone, that's it for this week. Again, we always want to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope that you got something out of it. If you have any questions or you would like me to explore a concept on the show, please email me at 10minutejazzlesson@gmail.com. That's the number 10minutejazzlesson@gmail.com. If you enjoy these lessons, as always, please consider donating to our podcast. You can find the donate button on our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com. If you want to keep the show up and running, please consider sending a few dollars our way if you got something out of these episodes. If you'd like an easy way to donate to the show that doesn't cost you any extra money, please use the Amazon link on the front page of our website. If you have to buy something anyways, by using our Amazon link, they kick us a small amount and it doesn't cost you anything extra. Thanks for listening, everybody. Good luck with the material. Most of all, have fun, and we'll see you on the next episode with part 2 of our Diminished Dominance series.